We'll see.
We are live at United Nations headquarters in a time when it's been 70 years since the Human Rights Declaration took place. So I have a very special guest with me today, Ibrahim, and he's doing his research against what's happening with Islamophobia here in France and also in New York City. So hi Ibrahim, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
So tell us about the work that you are doing, especially with Muslim youth.
So my work focuses, if I have to talk about Muslim youth, I can, but my work focuses mainly on Islamophobia and Islamophobia through security measures. After 9/11, governments needed or felt the need to implement measures and policies to fight against terrorism. And in the US, like in France, that had impacted Muslim communities because those policies were not necessarily the best one to fight against terrorism, but they were actually rooted in Islamophobic ideas. And that harmed the community in the sense that Muslim communities were, for example, put under surveillance largely, even though a really small part of Muslims actually engage in acts of terror. And if I have to talk about the youth, the way it affects the youth here and in France is particularly through schools that became part of this surveillance apparatus, meaning that within schools, people are spied by law enforcement agencies, by intelligence agencies. Here in New York, informants were sent into classrooms. At Brooklyn College, for example.
Wow.
And in France, they ask professors to look out for signs of radicalization, but because of that, one boy who was, I think, 8 years old was arrested by the police just because he said something along the lines that he was not Charlie, he was not identifying as Charlie. Charlie is this thing that people identified as after the terror attacks of January 2015, and he was actually taken in by the police for further interrogations, and his parents were also subsequently arrested and interrogated by the police. It creates an environment in which these youth can't learn as well as they should and as well as they would want to. And this is a problem because at a personal level, everybody should have the right to education. It's a human right to be able to receive education as everybody else. But it's also a problem because education, in my opinion, in my personal opinion, is something that can help someone form their own ideas and so resist ideas that are extreme or propaganda that is propagated by terrorist organizations. So if you don't give the people a chance to learn and to forge their own critical thinking, that could actually lead to people believing whatever is told to us by any organization.
So what are the measures that you are taking to build awareness in this situation, Islamophobia?
So through my research, I try to spread my research and make it understandable to a lay public. I think researchers and scholars should do that more actually. I think we have an issue today in academia doing that, spreading our research and explaining our research to a public that is not necessarily specialized in our area of expertise. But I also work with community organizations, both here and in France, to spread awareness about Islamophobia. What is Islamophobia, how it is articulated, and because my expertise is Islamophobia through security, that's the thing that I tackle in general in those organizations. That's the area, the precise area in which I can help.
Also, do you think, a lot of the time here, what's happening, maybe when the children are growing up, like for example, young black boy will have, more encounter with police and then somebody who is not a person of color. Do you think Islamophobia has some similarities with this?
I definitely it has some similarities, and it also intersects with anti-blackness. A lot of Muslims in the US and in France are actually black. Before September 11, black Muslims were put under surveillance during the civil rights movements, and we know, for example, that Malcolm X was put under surveillance by the FBI. So those things are actually linked. They part of a strategy that aims at controlling difference. If I refer to the work of Michel Foucault a lot in my PhD, and for Michel Foucault, the modern state is trying to impose control over the population, and especially over segments of the populations that are outside of what is called the norm, meaning who are different in many ways. And black people, like Muslim people, and sometimes black Muslim people, are considered by the state, unfortunately, as different. And that difference is scary for the state, or sometimes it's also problematic. And that has to be quenched, that has to be controlled by policies such as surveillance.
So this is also Black History Month, and we're talking about Islamophobia and people in color. So what do you think that here at the United Nations, we are representing our community, what will be our message to the youth in the community?
This is difficult because there is so many messages to pass to the community and to the youth. But I think one message that is really important is that we should not lose hope, and we should fight for human rights. I think that some policies try to construct minorities as issues, as problems.
Yes.
And I think that it's interesting because those communities, they are constructed, or they try to construct those communities as problems or as issues, but those communities can't be resolved as problems. They can't accept to be treated as problems, and so to be resolved in the future. Because you don't resolve human beings. Human beings have the right and the capacity to live their life the way they want, as long as it doesn't interfere with other people's life.
Yes. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Nishan Mirza, and you are?
Ibrahim Bechrouri. Je suis chercheur à l'Institut français de géopolitique de l'Université Paris 8, et ça m'a fait très plaisir d'être ici. Merci.
This is Nishan Mirza from Turkish Journal.